discover BMX?
The back of Boys Life magazine in like 1975.
Was it an ad for a bicycle or?
CYC mail order cab. Sent away for it immediately.
Did you get a bike out of that or?
No. Actually, we didn't get real bicycles for a long time after that, but I always lusted after them. I think my first real kind of bicycle was a Yamaha shock bike.
Those are sweet.
I had lots of other bikes before that, but the first kind of real BMX style bike, you know. Yeah, I had a Team Mongoose frame I traded some neighborhood kids parts for, and then just built it up with, I remember, tough wheels and like aluminum bars and tough neck. And yeah, that was when like the geometry just kind of felt right and you started learning on it. This is all right.
You moved to California in 1988, is that right?
88, yeah.
What prompted you to move out to California?
Small town life I was over it.
Did you know anybody out here already?
No. One of my roommates at home was like, I'll go with you. I'm like, all right. So we came out here and we kind of tried to make a go of it, and then really wasn't working together, so he went his way, I went my way, and went from there. I actually had a distant uncle that I didn't know at all, and my mom called and was like, hey, can my son stay with you for a couple weeks, and that was it. And then he's like, all right, you guys got to go. So we went our separate ways, and my mom called up an old neighbor who happened to live out here that I didn't know either. And I ended up staying with them, and they lived around the corner from GT. But back up a little bit was when I graduated high school, I only lasted in my parents' house for another couple months because all I was doing was riding. My parents couldn't grasp the concept of making anything out of bicycle riding, so I got thrown out of the house. And eventually I was like, well, let's get out of here. And then when I came here, I really had no intentions of doing anything in BMX. I just wanted to change of pace and see the sights. But because I wasn't making any money and I needed a job, and I discovered just by accident that GT was like 2 blocks from the house I was staying in, I just went down, filled out a resume, and seriously bugged them every day, 3 times a day, until I finally said, look, come in and stop bugging us. You know? So I went in there, and the guy, Bill Galloway, took me in the back and said, here, assemble a gyro, put these cranks on. He basically ran me through the test. He's like, okay, start on Monday. Like, all right. So I started in the customer service department. So that was kind of the beginning of just actually getting into the BMX industry. I had no intentions of doing that at all, ever. So.
How long did you work for GT?
2 years, 2.5 years. Moved from the started riding a lot, and that was cool because I just had unlimited bike parts at that point, so it was fun riding a ton. And went from customer service department to managing the freestyle team, and they built this death trap of a half pipe and made us drag it around the country, and then they started building a second one, and I was just like, I'm not doing this again. Somebody's gonna get hurt. And I think somebody did. I think somebody ended up rear-ended that second one going out of Glamis or something. And Dave Walker would know that story, I think. I was gone, so.
I've heard you say that you graduated from the Mcgoo School of Team Management.
I did, yeah.
Can you elaborate on what that means?
Well, he kind of took me under his wing immediately because we shared the customer service space a lot. He built team bikes or whatever, and so he started introducing me to magazines and taking me to events and going on some little tours in Tijuana and just the local stuff, you know. So just kind of learned from being there, you know, meeting all the guys. And when he left, he went to Mongoose. So the riders, they were tough on me for a while. They ran me through the ring, you know, just acted like little kids and fucking around constantly. It sucked. But eventually you earned their respect, and it changed, you know.
Do you remember like some of the guys that were on the team back
yeah,
then?
All of them. I mean, we did, at that point, you know, BMX, especially freestyle, was completely, you know, dead, for lack of a better term. And Rich Long had us doing school tours all fall long, and everybody hated it. You know,
Red Ribbon Week.
Oh God, you know, just coming back from summer tour and then starting right back into this, and then going to schools, and all they really cared about was to see you crash. You know, nobody gave a shit about any of the talent or anything, so it just kind of sucked and wore on you. But for those schools tours, it was always Volker. Like you'd come up from here up to Huntington, and I'd bring out Gary Pollock for like 3-4 months at a time, and he'd stay in a Holiday Inn. And just go on this tour, you know, just living in this Holiday Inn. It felt so bad for him. Brett Hernandez would come in. His brother Trevor would do shows with us. Sometimes Robert and Ruben Castillo, and then Just Darenforth joined the team, and they do that. And then Joe Johnson was here for a while, and I think he got sick of it. He's like, well, I got to move back home. So we got kind of out of doing that, and then he kind of just quit riding anyways. And Dino DeLuca was still a huge part of it. And Martin Aprio did shows, and once in a while we'd take Hans Ray with us if we needed somebody. It was just show after show after show after show.
So tell me about this Dyno Slammer. I've heard that's a sample, and how is that different from the production model?
The Aggressor was doing very well, so in typical kind of rich, long fashion, he's like, well, let's do a dyno one. You know, always sell. So we did that as longer than the Dyno Freestyle frame at the time. The back end and the front end were both longer. I had Gary Turner, I'm like, okay, this is how I want it, and he welded that up and welded double, because I was kind of riding S&Ms when I was at home, you know? And so I was like, I went double thick dropouts, so weld two together, and we did that. So we stole the bashguard off the Aggressor and then just did the whole geometry for basically how I wanted the bike. And I don't know why I kept that one. I didn't keep anything from that era, really. Those two frames were almost the same exact time. That's a first generation dirt bike too. But yeah, so I don't know why I kept that, and it's cool that I did. I'm glad I have it.
Did you know Moeller during this time
Yeah,
too?
see, that was what was awesome. Was like right around the time where we started getting settled in at GT. Mcgoo had the magazines come down. Stonehenge was still in the back. We put that thing together once or twice a week, and Moeller would come down with like Spike and Lou and Andy and man, Chris, I think he was 18. We just talked about this recently. He was 18, driving this beat up Toyota Celica, and he was gnarly, man. He was just, I remember meeting him. I was like, wow, that kid's like way too much for me to handle, you know. But we ended up spending a lot of time with him, and at that same kind of time was when all the pros from the East Coast the racers started moving into Huntington, and they were in what turned into the POW house. Was originally the 13th Street house in Huntington. So they lived a couple blocks from us, so we always rode with all these race guys. And
So the freestylers and the racers all just kind of mixed together?
all the time, yeah, we rode all the time.
Yeah, that was super sweet.
It was fun.
Seems like a good time.
I was thinking last night about like last time, because a couple last times I rode with you, and I remember one Sunday going to Tijuana skate park, and I think Moeller forgot his bicycle.
He had a
skateboard.
skateboard, yeah. Gosh, that was so sweet. I wish that place was still there.
So how did your time at GT end?
The half pipe deal, when we were well along, like the construction of the second one, it was huge. It was like this drop belly thing. We're supposed to be basically going to pull it with like the front end of a school bus, like I think it was called a C60 or something, giant truck. And I just remember just looking at it all like, this is nuts. So what I started doing was looking into going to, like, I'm just going to take the summer and go do something. So I'm like, I love Woodward. See if I can get a job there. So I kind of got into be something at Woodward. And like, just show up, we'll get. So on the way, Woodward's actually about 2 hours from where I grew up. So on the way back, I stopped at one of my best friend's wedding, and I didn't leave for 2 years.
You just stayed?
Stayed back in West City for 2 years and had a blast with all my friends from high school and just kind of assimilated back into that life. Still was riding, and after 2 years, I was like, I can't do this anymore. So back out here, almost to the day. Started working with Chris and Mcgoo at Mental Jimmy's, and S&M shared a warehouse in Anaheim, and then not very long, and shortly after that, when I started working at Airwalk. Yeah.
Okay. So how did you end up at Airwalk?
They were trying to kind of regroup and ramp up the whole thing, and they had taken their skate team manager, Sin, had kind of taken on the design role and was being pretty successful with it, and that's when like the one shoe was taken off, and so Sin was like freight train rolling kind of. So they're like, okay, well, we need some to promote it. So they brought in 3 team managers, a skate, surf, snow, and myself to do like 2-wheeled stuff.
So are you working with Motocross as well?
Not yet.
Not yet, no.
No, as that kind of started to go, I met some guys that rode BMX and were into Moto, and they introduced me to Randy Lawrence, who was super into BMX and was a mechanic at the time for Doug Dubach for Factory Yamaha. So Randy just kind of single-handedly introduced me to so many people. It's like within a month, I'm in Jeremy McGrath's box van giving him shoes, and Ricky Carmichael's like 7 calling me up. You mean all I gotta do is call you for shoes? I'm like, yeah, man. You know, so we started that whole motocross thing back then, and that kind of blossomed. It was super fun, but I was only at Airwalk for a year, but man, what we did in that year was huge.
So your role there was team manager?
Team manager, and then the snow team guy really didn't work out. Like, he's a great guy, but it wasn't really what he was good at, so they moved him into like production. So then the skate team guy and myself took over the whole snow program too. So that kind of got me into snowboarding. So then I went there from that.
Who was in charge of Airwalk at the time?
The two owners were still battling it out. Bill Mann and George Yon were the owners. And then a guy named Lee Smith was the president. And we had a marketing, what's that marketing lady's name? Liz Kiley. And then, a couple other office people. We had Jamie Muehlhausen was the art director, and he's at Tony Hawk's now. He's been there forever.
Do you remember what kind of budget you were working with?
Airwalk was crazy, yeah. As far as giving out shoes, no budget. Travel, no budget. The only parameters were if we were going to leave the country or go to Hawaii, we had to get permission. Other than that, he wanted you on the road 3 weeks a month.
Wow.
And it was just carte blanche. I think we gave, at that point, we gave the ADA like 150 grand for race series. Can't remember what we gave Matt and Steve to do the BS series, but that was the shot in the arm that freestyle needed right then, and it was so fun doing that, working with Matt and Steve back then, and even in the future, but back then we had so much fun.
Can you tell us about Sin at all? Sinisa
Yeah, I could never
Egelaja?
pronounce it. It's just always Sin. He was one of the funniest people I ever met, and he'd pretty much do anything to make you laugh or for a joke,
Was he a part of the design process as well, or was he more advertising?
He was the design process. Yeah, he I know I didn't work with him when he was in team management at all. He gave me a couple pairs of shoes. I've met him a couple times, and after that, when I started working with him, he was completely the designer.
Okay. So, tell me about those pedals.
We were at Airwalk, and Sin wanted to do the most ridiculous ad campaign, or it might have been a catalog shoot. He wanted the most outlandish, ridiculous stunts that just couldn't possibly be done, but he wanted good photos of it. So his roommate at the time was Dan Sturt, who's a famous skate photographer, probably still is. I haven't seen him in years. He said, I need a pair of pedals. So we took these, drilled holes in them, bolted a pair of shoes to them, and said, come to the office on Saturday. So he has a crane when I get there, and a launch ramp on one roof, and it's a parking lot between the two buildings. This is absolutely not possible. So he harnesses me up, strings me up on a crane with these, and the only thing that's holding my bike on is my shoes. So we're trying to he's like, do a tabletop. And he's like, we're going to Photoshop out the rope. I'm like, this is ridiculous. And then once he got me up there, I was scared to death. And so I did a couple things and got down and then he actually had me do one other thing. I don't remember, some sort of flip looking thing. And it ended up in the catalog, but people were bummed. Like, it was ridiculous. But that's why these DX pedals have holes in them.
What were your favorite shoes during that period? Do you remember?
Gym shoes.
The gym shoes, yeah. Was it just that because most people's first sport was gym, like gym class, so y'all wanted to do a gym shoe, or was it because of all the different name combinations? Is that why it was called the gym?
Yeah, no, it was like gymnasium.
Gymnasium,
yeah.
Okay. So how did you end up hooking up almost all the top riders in BMX?
Freestyle was relatively easy, and I've been going to events and knew quite a few people, and I had a good relationship with the magazines. The racers, man, it was like they were brainwashed. No, the only shoe we can ride in is Vans. No other shoe in the world will work, and I'd be like, man, pulling teeth. But it worked. We started, and then the racers turned out to just love it. I had racers that memorized every catalog, every shoe, every colorway.
Did you put the Foster brothers on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Were you involved with their shoe at all, or was that after your time?
That was after my time. Yeah.
Do you remember the NTS series, or was that around?
Not the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are some of the favorites from.
Still. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean the second series I think are still the best BMX shoes that were ever made. The NTS 2s were amazing.
Joe Rich and Tosh and all that crew, like Lucky, those guys, that's pretty much all they wore.
Do you remember how the sponsorship with the BS contest, you mentioned that earlier, do you remember how that came about?
Well, that was my passion, was the freestyle side of it.
Did you already know Matt?
Yeah. But not very well. We just became, after all that, we became really good friends.
Eddie Roman, freestyle showman.
That's crazy. I was gonna say, where did we meet?
It was 1993 at the Oklahoma City BS comp, the very first one.
We built the park there.
Yeah, I actually had gone up a couple of times from my little town to help work on ramps, and
I was there 3 weeks.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, it was that you were the first person I ever knew that had one of those the Caesar cut. Remember?
Great.
What was your favorite part of the job?
Oh man, working with everybody. I had great riders. I think when I left, we had 94, 96 riders. That's a lot, and every single one of them were like friends, and none of them, I don't remember anyone that took advantage of anything. They were just super grateful,
Yeah.
And then going on to snowboarding, there were other people that would take advantage or felt entitled and that kind of shit. But I think just from the sport being kind of downtrodden, and people just sticking with it, or was their passion, they're really grateful for anything and everything they got.
Awesome. What do you think happened with the brand? Like, how did Airwalk?
Well, that's why I got fired. I mean, if I had to sum it up, it would be, we took that year, probably a little over a year, and it wasn't just me. Like, I had John Paul with me a lot, and he helped me a ton, and we changed the face of shoes and BMX in that year, and that guy got a taste of the owner, George Yon at the time, got a taste of the success, and he used to say action sports were a pimple on a whale's ass. That was his quote, and I'd be like, not just me, but I think everybody else kind of were somewhat in agreement that just keep the momentum going the way we were. But he really just kind of wanted to go after Nike. That was his thing. He just says Nike, and we're just like, no way. I mean, you can grow and probably be a pretty big business and still have the integrity and still have action sports, and but he just kind of went. So I didn't agree with it at all and made that well known, and so me being disgruntled didn't work out.
Did you leave, or were you let go?
I was let go.
Okay.
I was let go. Yeah, I think that was the other thing with him wanting to go into other markets and do that. So he'd take the 3 team managers. First off, he's like, okay, do your job. You got to be out of the office 3 weeks a month. And then he'd come at us and he's like, okay, for the next 2 weeks, you guys are going to be in separate rental cars, driving around the state of Pennsylvania, going to every shoe store, filling out weird kind of surveys, and then come back and say, where and why can we go after the big Reeboks and Nikes and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, wait a minute, I don't want to be fucking going, I want to be doing my job, and this is why I got hired, and this is what I'm loving doing. I don't want to be going to shoe stores in central Pennsylvania. I left there.
Right.
So that's where my, and like the motocross thing was going big, and it's like, man, we're got a lot of momentum.
It seemed like it was blowing up, and they went from being
just
one of the
wanted
most
to go this
beloved
way.
brands in skating and BMX to almost universally despised by everyone. So did you go to Vans from there, or what happened after Airwalk?
After Airwalk, I just didn't have anything to do, so I was living down here still in Carlsbad, and another friend was getting married in Pennsylvania, so I was like, all right, drove, just like, let's get out of here for a while. Drove back to Pennsylvania, and I wasn't there very long, and the second partner in Airwalk, there was a big giant lawsuit going on, and they had split up, and then I don't really know the details or where or why any of this happened, but he ended up at Vans, kind of wanting to just Airwalk, and he calls me in Pennsylvania, somehow tracks down my parents' number, calls me in Pennsylvania, he's like, got a job for you at Vans, we're going to do a snow boot program, you interested? And I said, yeah. So drove all the way back, go do all these, nobody at Vans, it's really bizarre, nobody at Vans really knows what's going on, it's really high level stuff, but they want me on board. So I get hired by Steve Van Doren, he's like, I don't know why we were hiring you, but you're hired. So I seriously sat in an office for like 3 months, just taught myself Word on a PC and just how to send faxes and weird stuff there, and skate team manager quit, so I was in shipping skate shoes left and right to a bunch of skaters that I didn't ever meet or know. It was miserable.
You didn't like it?
No, it sucked. It was horrible. Like, I was wanting to quit, but I didn't know what else to do. And so then the first round of snow boots show up, and it's just these old Burton rip-offs that were like in a back stock somewhere in Korea that they put Vans logos on. It's like, all right. So then that was the start of something to work on the snow team. So I hired a skateboard team manager, Art P. Bass, great kid, just hadn't even graduated high school yet. He comes in, he does the skate team. Everett's kind of still doing BMX stuff as a consultant once in a while. I'm starting to try and juice up, take some of the Airwalk guys from this freestyle end, you know. Super difficult. Everything that I work for, I'm trying to take back, you know, in the BMX side of things. But then the snowboard thing started blossoming, and I created a team. I started with the following year's design process, which was all new to me but super fun. So I designed the whole line of boots. I think, if I remember correctly, we took the Vans from nothing to number 2 and beat out Airwalk in the second year of the whole program. So it was pretty.
How long were you at Vans?
4 years, 4 years.
What year do you remember? What year you left?
90. Well, I went to a snowboard clothing company, and part of my signing bonus was they bought me a 96 RM 125. So I think it was 96.
Would you say after Vans you did kind of move on from BMX?
Well, I was still doing snowboarding, and
Yeah.
I went to a snowboard clothing brand, and that was only a couple years. And actually, snowboarding's starting to die off, and I just was over it. Started riding dirt bikes a ton. Actually, you know, I think one year we did 80 days of snowboarding, and the next year I didn't do any because we were just riding Moto every weekend. So that kind of fell out of favor with snowboarding, and then that's when Matt and Steve said, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Nothing really." He's like, "Well, come work with us."
Earlier you mentioned about going to work for Matt and Steve, but we didn't really go into that. So how did that?
That's a big.
I didn't even know that. So how did that come about? That was after I'd moved on and gone to Austin.
It was a pretty gray area, and I still lived here, and obviously they were all still in Oklahoma. But Matt was starting to get the idea rolling for the CFB series. ESPN wanted to do the B3 stuff plus the XGames, and Matt was having trouble with the exhibit and what direction to take that clothing brand he had. So he's like, "Well, why don't you just come help?" You know. So I can't remember how it worked. I think I got some money from them, and I got some money from ESPN, and then it turned into just from ESPN, and I was basically sport coordinator or something, I think was on my checks. I don't remember. But, you know, we just did all the events, you know. It's like, I remember one year, I think 2000, we did 23 events or some shit. It was crazy. And then Mcgoo came on with the downhill series, you know, so we did the 3 Vans events, and then ESPN picked it up for X Games. So I learned how to run a bulldozer real quick, and we built those tracks with a great crew, Wessel and Psycho, and Mark Reyna, and Mark Hildebrand, those guys. We traveled all over pushing dirt around on ski slopes, you know. Yeah. Crazy time.
How did that event come off? I mean, in your eyes, did you think that was a successful event?
Yeah, I thought it was awesome. I think even right to the last one, I don't know. We thought that somebody might pick up the whole idea and run with it. And I think Eric Carter did something similar out at Glen Helen. And nowadays, even some of the BMX tracks are pretty big.
Right.
So, but not like that.
Do you feel like it did have that influence, though, to
Yeah,
make the tracks more interesting and better?
Well, you know, Mcgoo always would come into these meetings, and it was the best way to kind of to explain it was, you know, these pros are racing on the same track as the 5-year-old beginners. You know, Pop Warner and NFL don't have anything to do with each other, you know. Supercross tracks don't have the 6-year-old beginners racing them, you know.
Yeah.
These guys are supposed to be pros. Let's elevate it to a pro level. Let's pay them what a pro should be paid, and make a good show.
What do you remember from that day? Do you remember people eating it, or do you remember, you know, who won or crashes? Like, do you remember any gnarly slams?
Oh yeah, there's tons of gnarly slams. Everybody probably went down at some point or another. But we worked well with the riders, and we said, okay, if this is going to work, what do we need to do to make it safe for you guys to jump 65 feet and go at this speed, you know? So it was really smoothing out the track, you know. We worked really hard with that and finding different techniques, renting all this different types of equipment to smooth everything out, getting different types of dirt hauled in. And, you know, working at Woodward, they just, whatever we needed, you know, if we needed a certain type of dirt, Gary Ring would be on the phone. I know a guy. And pretty soon, like 16 truckloads would show up, and it was pretty cool. So, in typical Woodward fashion, and Gary himself, he did whatever it took because he thought it would elevate the sport and it would be good for the sport. And And so, you know, Woodward just always was super helpful like that. And that made it a lot easier to work on the track there.
Do you remember who the first person was to go down?
Well, we did a lot of testing before.
Yeah.
You know, like Psycho and Wessel were jumping stuff. And being at Woodward, the freestyle guys would come up and call on, and Dave Mirra was there too, and they'd come up and do stuff. But Robbie Miranda was huge as like a consultant. Brian Foster would come in, and you know, not just those guys would get in tractors too, you know, and they were passionate about trying to elevate the sport as well, so they were there to help.
That's cool.
Yeah, like Keith Mulligan's family came in and did all the, you know, the scoring and timing, and his dad ran the gate because they grew up big, and they became like family, you know, like our kind of our parents on the road. It was just a really cool vibe.
That's right.
Yeah.
Cool. Who do you respect or admire, like in BMX or in the moto world or just in life in general? Is there anyone that you've, you know, looked up to or emulated?
There's tons of people. I mean, I've always kind of not had heroes, but they're just the people that do inspire me. And I remember, you know, there's too many to go through a list. But yeah, I mean, my father.
Yeah.
For sure. Huge influence. I wouldn't have any of the love for two wheels if it wasn't for him. He got me into all this stuff at a very early age.
One more time here. Do you want to talk about influences again? I mean, you were saying that. Is there?
You know what we did kind of miss out on is Dave, because I was his first team manager, and that was pretty gnarly a couple weeks ago. You know. But you know, he was a cool little kid. As I was transitioning from the customer service department to the team manager deal, Todd Hoffman was the marketing director at that time at GT, and he went to, I guess it was a 2-hip contest in New York or something, and the plywood hood guys were like, "You have to see this kid," you know. So Hoffman came back, like, we got to get this kid. I knew of him from the hoods, you know, because we gave them stuff, and those guys were awesome. But so I just went. I remember just taking like a pallet jack through the warehouse and just stacking it full of everything this kid's gonna need. You know, probably 3 bikes and, you know, tons of forks. People bringing tons of forks and all these clothes. I wasn't even thinking twice about it. This is what we do to set up a new rider kind of thing. And to this day, if he was still around, he would come in and say, "The boxes of stuff that showed up at my house is insane." You know, he introduced me to his dad at the XGames the first time I met his dad, and he's like, "This is the guy that sent all that stuff that time." He's still freaked out about that. So, but I'd have to arrange all the travel with his mom, and this kind of came up on social media the other day. Kind of John Paul was living at the POW house, and Dave was staying with us, and he was 14 or something. And he was just a million miles an hour. He wouldn't stop. Like, he was up at 6 in the morning. "Let's ride. Let's go. Let's go." Like, we all had to work and conduct our lives and pay bills, and he was just. So reluctantly, I dropped him off one afternoon at the POW house. I'm like, if his mom knew what I was doing. And then they didn't last too awful long there. They got him to do a bunch of chores, and he rode. And but they were like, you gotta get him out of here. He was just so amped on riding. He was so little. Like he wasn't even strong enough to like spin 180 or 360. And he was so frustrated with that. You know, it's like, I can't wait till I get bigger. You know. But man, he could blast airs at that age even.
Yeah. How did you hear about him? His passing?
I was sitting in a restaurant for lunch, and it just came up on social media. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it came up on social media, and I immediately texted Tony D. Is this for real? And he was like, yeah.
What did you think about it? I mean, what was your reaction?
Anymore, I tend not to react too much until I get the details, especially, you know, that kind of thing. So I was, you know, hoping for the best. But yeah, I don't know. I think we should. A lot of us should start looking at head injuries.
So let's move on a little bit. Tell me about Boyle Custom Moto. You started in 2008 doing your own thing?
Yeah, I don't know, somewhere around there. That's when we just started making somewhat legit, you know. What it was is I got really hurt riding dirt bikes, and that was my passion. That was even my passion way before I got into BMX, and it was the reason I got into BMX is my parents thought it was either too dangerous or too expensive, so I didn't ever get any dirt bikes. And when I was finally making enough money to do it on my own, I think it was 28, I bought a bike and just started riding, and then it was just full on. I fell in love with it, started working in that industry some, met tons of people, going to races, learning how to work on bikes from pro mechanics, you know, just all that stuff. And I shattered my hip. And it was like 3 months in bed, couldn't walk, do anything. So
Riding motorcycles.
yeah, riding dirt bikes. And probably in the best shape of my life. I think it was 40. No, it's 30, 38. But riding twice a week and you know just having fun with it. But yeah, it bit me in the ass, and literally. And so after that, I was kind of, well, what am I going to do? I can't keep doing this. And you know, you can love bikes, but you're not going to love you back. They'll hurt you.
Yeah.
And Bill Bryant, who's a partner with Mcgoo, was overseas in the military, and he was coming back, and he wanted to start this street bike ride thing to Mexico, and that's about all I knew about it at the time, which turned into the El Diablo run, which they still do today, annually. And he's like, oh, you got to come on this. I'm like, I don't care about street bikes or anything. He's like, no, it'll be fun. Mexico's good and all that. So he kind of talked me into it, and it's like, well, I don't know what I want to do. So I always wanted to do Ducati Monster. So I found a real cheap one and took it apart and just basically bolted it back together and cut some things off. I think it was kind of fun. But when we got to Mexico, these guys rolled up on these handmade bikes, and I was just like, you made this? And you did that? You know, I was just blown away by the craftsmanship and just the kind of the art aspect of it. And just,
That was the next
that
thing.
was it.
That's cool. So how long after that did you start doing your own thing?
I came right home and it was never meant to be anything, you know. It was just having fun building bikes with my friends to go ride around here. I'm not even to this day interested in giant long rides. I just want to go up and down the coast or to the bar and get a taco, you know. I really don't care about riding across the country or anything.
Yeah.
And so
You're not a BMW guy?
No, I'm not going on any adventures. You know, that's why I have a van. You know, and man, people are gonna hate me for saying that, but I don't care. So it blossomed into that, helping friends and doing that. And I met a machinist guy and asked him to do some things for that gray bike. And as that relationship developed, we started making some things that we needed for our bikes. And I just finally said, well, why don't you make 10 of these and I'll put up an online store or something. So we created a brand called Benchmark, and which we ended up having a falling out. And I don't know where they're at with that. So I kind of walked away from that, and I was actually not going to do anything with. I was so bitter and over it. I wasn't going to do anything, and all my friends kind of talked me, you can't walk away from this. So that's how I started, like kind of my own little brand. And the BCM thing was just left over from a blog I had. None of it really meant anything. And it's just kind of blossomed into what it is today.
Okay, that's cool. How would you compare the BMX world to the Moto world? Is there anything similar? Is there anything the
Well, there's
differences?
just many different aspects. I mean, we'd have to nail down more of the Moto world. Like the racing side of things is very sterile and very quick paced, and you get things done. And then the chopper world is you're walking through, 6 inches of cigarette butts and sunflower seeds and polishing dust,
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of both,
Yeah. There's some similarities.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
some
I mean,
differences.
BMX racing is a little bit like motocross racing in a sense, and then there's the good party aspect of freestyle, and you start to have enough fun doing that kind of thing, or living your life in a different culture, I guess.
Yeah. This one you might have to think about for a second, but what's the best advice that you've ever received since your involvement in both industries, multiple industries? I mean, you've worked in snowboarding and motocross and BMX and cafe racing and worked with a lot of different people. Have you ever had any advice that was just struck you?
Yeah. I kind of, it was very difficult for me to live by, but all this stuff's supposed to be fun, so don't take it so seriously, I've lost a bunch of friends over this stuff, and you think back and you're like, we did this for fun, all of it. You know, riding bicycles, riding motorcycles, building motorcycles. You know, all of it was supposed. It's not a medical device. You know, it's fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I struggle with it daily, just not to take things seriously. And I like to be kind of a perfectionist with things. I don't ever want anything to go out the door that isn't perfect to my standards. So in that sense, that kind of takes the fun out of it at times. But you got to have a standard of excellence.
But even doing your best job is kind of fun, has its own reward.
Yeah, absolutely. I have that innate need to create, and then also that need for people to accept it and like it. You can make the best thing ever, and if people don't like it, it just doesn't really work, you know.
So what would you say you took from your time in BMX?
I don't think that's over. You know, I don't think that'll ever be over. You have a family there. You still talk to people. You still. Man, I go to sites. I still follow on a bunch of BMX stuff on all the social media avenues. You know.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that's cool.
I don't suspect that that'll end.
Sometimes you wish you would.
Are there any projects or parts that you're especially proud of here in the shop?
I'm proud of all my bikes. There isn't one of them that wasn't. I mean, they're never done. They're never, you're like, oh, that's done. You know, that never happens. But everything I'm pretty proud of.
What would you say that you've gotten the best reaction to or the best response to?
Yeah. Bike-wise?
Yeah. Or part-wise?
I haven't changed parts much. I mean, you just kind of keep adding on. I'm really slow about it, and it's how I want to keep it kind of boutique-y and high-end. So that stuff, it's still the same as it was in the beginning as it is today, and yeah, so it's still pretty well respected, I guess. I mean, I'm still selling stuff. So it's weird because, like we touched on a minute ago, is there's different facets of all the moto things, and like I think the Harley guys really, you know, they like that panhead, that gray bike, and then you know, cafe bikes obviously they like the Norton, and something that I built a BMW for my friend. So you know, I'm very proud of that because I hated the bike, and it came out good. You know, I think I'm proud of it.
Yeah.
You know, and it was that was definitely a challenge to build something you don't like. Yeah. I've tried very hard not to pigeonhole myself into a brand. I'm not a Harley builder. I'm not a chopper builder. You know, I get bored too easily. That's why I worked in snow, skate, BMX, and you know, this stuff now.
Got to mix it up.
Yeah. That was great. That was great about footwear.
Something different every season and different all the time. Different.
Everybody wears shoes.
Talk about, is this the Norton Commando? Is that how you say that?
Yeah.
Tell me about that bike.
I wanted to do a cafe bike. Cafe, I guess at that point. That was years ago. 2006, I think I bought that. And I really just liked the way the engine was angled and the shocks and all that. So I just, all right, let's do a Norton Commando. Knew nothing about it. Just kind of went by the aesthetics of it. Got on Craigslist, found one in Orange County, and just started from there. Started working with the aluminum guy named Evan Wilcox in Northern California, and took a long time, that bike.
How long did you work on it?
Well, not steady. So I work on it for a while and then I hate it, or I'd run out of skill. I put it in the corner and either figure out how I wanted to change things, and I went back and forth with the guy that did the tins a few times, and Photoshop renderings and cutting stuff off and sending it back and forth. And I think I finished that bike for a show in Brooklyn, but I don't know if it was about 6 years from start to finish. But it sat for a long time in between there. You know, it wasn't a constant, obviously.
Did you have multiple variations of it, or was this?
No.
No.
That when it was done, that's how it is
Okay.
right now. A couple of like that. The pinhead has kind of metamorphosed, you know, as we went. So.
How can people follow you? I know you've got an Instagram, but what's your Instagram?
Boyle Custom Moto, I think. Yeah.
So they can follow you on Instagram
Yeah,
there. What about your website? So you've got a blog.
BoyleCustomMoto.com, and then there's like a news section and blog and like the store. And then there's a Facebook page I don't do a whole lot with. And then I just started the Snapchat thing, and I'm horrible at that. But
I noticed you
we're
keep your
snapping now.
you keep your blog pretty updated though. You put photos.
I try and
pretty
do stuff on
regularly.
the blog once a week, and then usually it kind of overlaps some of the same content in the news section of the website. But Mondays I try and do something. I still try, like, I try and do things like I do this thing Sundays, because I try and ride. I try and remember why I got into all this stuff. So I try and go on Sundays and at least go for a ride around here, or go to Ramona, or
Head out.
just
Get
go
on the
ride
road.
for a little bit and remember why I hole up in this garage.
That's good. That's good. Would you have any advice for any industry dudes or team managers that might be watching this or reading this?
It's been a while since I did any of that. No.
The have fun one was
Good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Be open-minded.
Is there anything else that we haven't talked about that you think would be important to mention here?
I don't know. It doesn't matter because you can delete anything. But for me, I had like multiple things that happened. Dave Volker was a part of a lot of those things. I remember we were riding, and this little bank's about this big, and it was like a hip, but it wasn't supposed to be like a 7-foot hip. It's this little thing, and he was blasting. I mean, Dave Volker, just boom, doing his turn downs. And we're talking like 8 feet. I mean, in my mind, maybe it was 6 feet, but it was, to me, he was probably 8 feet,
Yeah.
And he's just cranking these turn downs and coming down. I mean, I have a lot of stories like that.
I got tons of Dave's stuff.
Yeah,
You know,
so-
those tours.
What's like, do you remember something that you saw those dudes do? I mean, you're talking Dino DeLuca, man. I mean, that dude, it's physically impossible what that guy was doing, Even today's standards, you can't wrap yourself up
The
around
cool
a
thing
leg.
with experiencing with Dino was, we talked him into getting off the coaster brake.
Yeah.
And he was just destroying wheels, and was, can keep lacing up wheels. And so he lost a couple tricks, but he got most of it back, But yeah, he was so cranked in high airs, jeez. Smooth.
Is there one thing though, like, is there one particular time or a trick or something, somebody did something where you're just like, that is ridiculous?
I remember seeing Matt fire off that rail down when we did that bashguard. I think that was the first time I ever saw him.
In San Diego down there?
Yeah.
I drove by that rail the other day.
Had that pipe fitting.
Had to pull off.
You had to pull off it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was that bashguard shootout session like? Do you remember? Did
That was
y'all
a
just
great
go down
day.
to Home Ave ditch and shoot
Yeah,
it?
well, I think we met at Qualcomm super early, and it was just everybody, and we just started going from place to place, and yeah, that was a fun day. I was tired.
I shot all day long.
Yeah,
Yeah.
place to place. And
Which bike were you on?
because I wasn't working at GT. That was just when I left, so I was on the Bully,
That's right.
which was fine. That was kind of my favorite bike to slide. That plastic bashguard. That's like we did with that. That thing just broke the other day. I came out here and noticed that thing snapped. But
Just by sitting there?
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
funny.
But we always were messing around with it. Like, see that, a skate riser under it, and trying to protect the chain a little bit more, and then like, we just kind of got over it and went back to sprockets.
Yeah, it's so crazy.
Did you get a lot of those back broken? Do you remember if the...
No, there was a pretty liberal warranty policy on those things, I think.
What is that stem on there?
It is a Pro Neck.
Dude, that stem right there that's the stem that I couldn't figure out. We need to take a photo of that thing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. That was a co-sponsor when I was riding for Chris. We got Pro Neck and Vans, I think.
Yeah.
Because that's the stem that was on my bike that Shad bought my old Dirt Bros Skyway, and he was trying to rebuild it. I'm like, the stem was like a Pro Neck, and he didn't know what it was, and this is it.
Well, see, and then I forgot. I found the stem bolt the other day. We always did this. I don't know if you did too, Vic. Was the original GT mallet stem was the best stem bolt.
Yeah.
I found this one the other day, and this. These Epoch headsets that GT made.
Those are funny. Forgot about that.
You know what this is drilled for? I think so.
I'm gonna take a picture of that and send it to Shad. Be hyped. You don't know Shad, do you?
Yeah.
You know him?
Yeah.
That dude,
Oh, he wants that bike. So
oh yeah. He's got so much stuff.
When I asked him questions to ask you, that was the first thing that he popped up. Was like, ask about that thing.
I didn't go this year because I've been hurt, but I do a show in Portland, a motorcycle show, and he always comes and sees me.
Yeah, he's awesome. Every time I go up there.
I want to take a photo of it too.
This is it, man. It's so funny. Because I never have seen one of these.
That's what was on your old bike?
Yeah.
The one.
6M, right?
Yeah, it was.
So
I mean,
sick.
that one's been through a ton. I had that on so many bikes.
Yeah, I had it all polished up, and that's it.
Let's see the.
I don't know if mine was an XL or not. I don't know.
That's crazy. Let me just ask you one more question, and then
Yeah,
we'll.
we can keep going on and over.
Just wanted to see if you had any. Let's say.
I wish I had thought more on some of these, you know.
Yeah, no, you did great. That's great. It's awesome. Do you have any thanks? Any people you want to say thanks to?
Oh yeah, I mean, again, I wish I would have thought of that. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, thanks on the BMX side of things, Mcgoo definitely. Andy, Spike, and Lou, like right off the bat, were super good to me. Moeller, John Paul, Matt and Steve, yeah, Chuck D. Geez, just keep going on through the years. Bob Harrow, to this day, still a great guy. I tell people, you know, with the XGames, I had to escort and kind of babysit Eminem one time. You know, went and partied with Perry Farrell the night after that. You know, just had all these kind of star experiences with all this stuff. But the time I met Bob Harrow was the first time I was starstruck.
It's like me with Lance Mountain.
I was just like, I mean, in the '70s when he was doing illustrations, this is kind of my first maybe taste of design, and I loved it. And then when I met him, and I think that same night we hung out in a hotel bar for like 6 hours, and so yeah, turned into a friend, and he lives nearby, and I see him now and again.
Do y'all ever ride motorcycles together?
No, I don't. He always. I don't think he has a bike anymore. I think he said, "It's too crazy for me now."